Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig or check out my website, our website, infectionpodcast.com. It's not just me that can do this thing. It takes two to tango, as they say. Brian with an eye Alders, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Hopefully everybody's having a good day. Nice, beautiful weather around the whole country.
No, it's terrible.
No, except for where Nick is.
Tornado.
Like,
there was 4 tornadoes here yesterday. There was a bunch of thunderstorms this afternoon. I thought
it was supposed to be perfect there. The beach and everything else.
Well, I mean, my tan's looking great. I know.
Well,
take my shirt off. But
when the pool opens here, I'll get a tan then.
I'm looking real good. The tan is looking real good. No. You can't. I'm not. We're not doing that. Brian, we have got to start with some meme stock. I mean, we don't give financial advice. We are not a licensed broker. We're not pretending to be a licensed broker. But for whatever reason, GameStop and the failing used video game store company stock absolutely exploded. What was this, on Monday when this began? Out of nowhere, so. What was the deal? What caused this thing to soar 119% on Monday, Brian? What big announcement from them?
Actually, something happened Monday and it jumped. I think it happened Monday, jumped Tuesday, but there was an online post on X, I think from, they call him Roaring Kitty. And this is the person that was heading up all of that. This guy got
hauled in front of Congress over this last time.
for coordinating stock trades. Yeah. And so all he did was post a picture. And if you look at it, the picture is just of somebody who was sitting back in their chair and they lean forward. I mean, it's a still where it kind of it lets you think that they sat forward. So it's like, does that mean he's now at attention? He's getting ready to do something. So everybody jumped on the stock. The short sellers lost, was it $1.4 billion?
Yeah,
on their shorts for GameStop, and it went up 400 million as of, let's see, that was 2 days ago. So on Monday. Yeah. And then I'm not sure. I don't have. Can you pull up maybe a current one?
Yeah, I get a stock chart. Before we get the stock
mine are Monday and Tuesday. I haven't looked at it today.
This was simply the
there you go. That was it. Sitting forward in a chair. He hasn't posted in years since the last debacle.
The tweet received 26.6 million views, and this was simply it. And this caused the GameStop stock to grow 118%.
Everybody wanted to be in early.
So let's see. Yeah. So let's see what's going on with old GameStop Areno here. We'll jump over to the charts at Yahoo Finance. Okay. So
now's time to jump in, right?
Yeah. So we got to go to the 5-day to see what's going on here. So everything was normal. They've been trading around 17, 15, 17. Let's see. What is the 52-week average? 52-week range. Okay. Well, that's not accurate. So let's go to 3 months and grab this chart from here. So you're looking at an average of between $14 and maybe like $17 a share, which is probably still high. Again, not financial advice. Probably still high for the company, but not out of anything crazy. So the 13th rolls around. Right? That's Monday. Monday morning rolls around and things are happening. The stock jumps to $36. It's climbing up, and it goes up to $78 or $80 on Tuesday, yesterday. That's at 7:40, and then it has been slowly creeping its way back down. It sits at the close was $39.50, and it's currently after hours at 35.9. So I guess coming back to reality on this once again. I hope a whole bunch of people put in a bunch of money yesterday and lost it all.
Well, I mean, yeah, he didn't give any orders. All he did was post a picture, and they are assuming that this is what assuming gets you. Either these people are going to make some money, or maybe they sold when it jumped up, they bought right away. I mean, sure, some people made some money, but a lot of other people lost money because they got it at a higher price.
If you had purchased even Monday morning at $28 a share and were able to hold on to it until Tuesday at around 9 o'clock Eastern, you would have been in pretty good shape. And then, the stock was halted like 15 times on Monday because of these crazy high peaks that it went up. But the reason, of course, we bring all of this up because it's funny. But secondly, the reality is, Brian, while some folks probably made a couple $100,000, maybe people made $1 million or so in the last 48 hours on this. The reality is GameStop Corp, GME, the stock, is still a company that does not have anything major going on. I mean, they are still in a fluttering brick and mortar business. And, they got
to figure out what they're going to do
they're not going to figure anything
relevant.
out. No, they're not. I mean, that to me, that ship has sailed. We're not that close to the next consoles yet. We will be there sooner rather than later. But you can imagine the next generation consoles, there might not even be an option with a disc. Or if there is, it might be the Pro or the highest tier version that has a DVD drive or Blu-ray drive, whatever technology it uses, actually built into it. And when that happens, which likely will be the next generation consoles, GameStop as a brick and mortar business, until they sell out of their used video game stock, essentially will be out of business. There will be no new games to buy. You'll go in and buy maybe you'll buy the little gift card thing that has the game redemption code, but there's no margin on that. I mean, literally none. So they're SOL.
Well, yeah, they're in a business that's no longer relevant and is possibly, as you said, not going to exist here in 5 years. I mean, the disc market may be just a thing. Like nowadays, how many people go and buy CDs at the store still? Like CDs, music CDs?
I don't think anybody.
Yeah, that's something that back in the day. See, I was talking about the beautiful weather, and then here we go. The storms are coming in. But back in the day, CDs were what you would get. Maybe you would go take it, buy a CD, rip it, so you could have it on your computer, and then
legally
listen to it on legal. That's why I said you go and purchase the CD, then you ripped it, then you have your MP3 form. That was normal. But with this, if they stop making consoles that use discs, your market's gone. There is no side hustle. With discs.
Look at FYE. I mean, that was that was the music store. Did you guys have FYE in Boise or something similar? Okay, FYE.
We had some little shop where you could go in and sell back. You go buy and sell used CDs.
No, this was. Let me see.
They had something like that.
This was FYE. Hold on, I gotta find pulling some deep cuts out. Sorry for the noise in the background. That hopefully will go away eventually. So this was FYE. It was a literal CD store. I mean, that's what they did. And they were in malls all over the place on the East Coast, at least where I grew up. And that's what they did. And guess what, Brian? FYE is now out of business because there is no market for physical media in terms of large scale. Now, there's a couple local record shops here. There's 3 or 4 of them, and they do well because that's a niche market, and they're able to survive.
Like a collector's item, and that's more of a collector's thing. People aren't. I mean, some people do collect video game boxes and things like that.
I mean, I do.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think that's becoming less and less of a thing. Maybe eventually it will come back, but what people are going to put out.
Here's the thing.
Put these out in the future like they do records. I mean, you're not going to be able to get an aftermarket console that has a CD player most likely built or added to it.
Here's the thing. There are some record stores that are doing well. The difference, those record stores are mom and pop shops. They are in most cases locally owned. It might be a small franchise, like maybe they're in a state or in a small region. The problem you've got with a company like GameStop is it is a massive corporation, meaning their overhead is incredibly high to operate. So, and in the case of used video games, I'm sure as there are here, there's a bunch in Boise. There's probably even more because it's a larger city of these mom and pop used video game stores where you can go in there and purchase anything from the NES all the way up to new release $60 titles. Those stores while they struggle and they're probably not making money hand over fist, it's a business model that for the collector, for the retro game nerd, for the guy that's building up his collection is suitable and fine. But GameStop's business model is current gen and maybe last gen games. That's it. It's not, there are some stores that I think do have a used, like a further back retro game collection, but it's not large enough where it works. So we say all of this not to rehash the whole GameStop thing, but the point is, it's still a company that does not have, in my opinion, any sustainable path forward.
Well, and this is something I saw. I was trying to find the article here, but there was an article that I saw in the last couple of weeks. I didn't know that this was going to pop up, and I needed to save this article.
Was it a Yahoo? Was it a story about the FTC and Microsoft Activision?
I just need to block all Yahoo. Yeah, because I'm still getting them, all different articles, all like a year old, all having to do with the same topic, but they feed in, and they're all from 2023. It's so stupid. I sent you one a couple last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I'm like, these things just keep popping up. I just need to block all Yahoos. Anyways, I saw a quote from him, and he was saying, We missed, we missed the mark. Like, they didn't anticipate physical media no longer being needed. And so then the GME, the GameStop executive chairman, Ryan Cohen, says disk drives should be required on consoles. So he's starting to demand that Microsoft and PlayStation require disk drives on their consoles and not be allowed to sell them without them.
Now, let me make the point here. I do think there should be disk drives, because it's important to note that there's still a lot of individuals that do not have access to broadband internet. Now, I will give the Biden administration credit. They do have this great plan. It's going to cost $1 gazillion to do it, but they're trying to roll out internet to rural areas. There's Starlink, of course, that is very popular. There's a lot of wireless point-to-point ISPs that are popping up in smaller, more rural areas that are providing people with broadband. It's technically not broadband because it's wireless, but it's fiber to a transmission point and then that beam to your house. So there are those options available. I like the idea of having physical media, but the problem you're running into, Brian, is it's becoming less and less practical. For example, you might say, oh, well, it takes too long to download a game. I want physical media. And I say, okay, the problem is the day one patch for this major game is 160 gigabytes, and it is not playable without that one game, that same day patch. So because that's the trend, it almost doesn't seem to matter, because the argument of, well, I don't have access to broadband is useless, because you have to have it, or you're going to have to get it somewhere if you want to play these games day one anyway, the major titles. And everything else, the small indie games, all that stuff, the only place that stuff is available is via download anyway. So I'm struggling to understand,
disc, though, right?
I struggle to understand why they even need why that's even a point anymore.
But they could do the same thing with a USB drive. In if you want to buy a boxed game, they send a little USB drive. They could do that instead of having a spinning
a cartridge. Sort
of a disc.
Yeah, I mean, you're going back to a cartridge. You're going back to a cartridge. That's what an NES cartridge is.
If they want it to be read only to where people can't mess with it, go back to a cartridge that you push and something that's read only that you can click into one of your USB ports or a.
But that still doesn't solve the problem.
Take a whole disc.
But it still doesn't solve the problem of same day release patches, because here's the reality.
That's why they don't need discs.
It's why they don't need any physical media. I'm saying it's not just the disc format. Well, and discs are very cheap. I mean, that's why they use them. It's very easy to print discs versus it is to flash memory cards. And that's I would argue, the failure rate of flashing hundreds of thousands of flash drives and memory cards versus stamping CDs, essentially, which is what they do. And I know it's not physically stamping. I get it. It's a very different process. So I think the point of, okay, there's no reason for physical media on these devices anymore is where the next generation is going to be, because the argument of I don't have internet doesn't work, because you literally do if you want to get access to these games.
Well, and I think everybody has finally accepted that they don't own the games. I mean, I think people used to think when I went and bought a game that I owned it, and you don't. Good old Bill Gates really drove this home for everybody. You have a license to use that game. You don't own the game itself, and so they're able to control that a little bit more by going to all digital, because they didn't like you going and reselling your game.
Sure.
They didn't like you going and letting your friend borrow your game. They didn't like the kiosks that let you go get discs, which must have been scratched and all kinds of crazy stuff. I never
Redbox and all those services. I used to use. Do you remember GameFly?
Yeah, I was an early. Well,
so was I.
I think I was an early GameFly one for a little bit, and then I was one of the early ones. I think before Steam, there was a service where you could pay a subscription and you could play a whole bunch of games. I'm trying to remember what it was.
The GameFly that I had was physical, so you'd get I think it was 2 games a month or 1 game a month from GameFly. But you talked about they don't like you reselling games. I mean, EA did this thing in the 2010s where when you would get a new game, it would come with a multiplayer activation code. And you would have to enter that in to play multiplayer so that if you went to resell the game, the resale price, you as buying a used game, you'd spend $40 instead of $60, but then you'd have to pay EA $15 to get access to the live.
Another code.
So it was like, well, then I might as well just buy the game new. So they definitely don't like the used game market. And if we're being honest, Brian, in the current status of games that we're dealing with, I don't know that the used market's super huge anymore anyway. I mean,
and most of them are live service games. And so
they are.
Almost every single live service game, as you said, has huge updates. The game past day one release is no longer anything that was printed on any of the discs that came out. And you can't just plug it in and play because it requires you to connect to the internet. It won't connect properly if you don't have the most updated version of the client that you're connecting to them with, which makes the disc totally irrelevant. You might as well not even have it at that point. And all these have their own stores that, sure, you can go and activate the game on the PlayStation or the Xbox with the disc, but then it's connecting to the internet and downloading. There you go. There you go. Online pass. And did that attach to your account?
Yeah. You would redeem it through the Xbox store or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
So
that's the new normal. So,
well, please don't use that phrase. But I mean, so the reality is, if you made money on GameStop, great. It's still a company that will likely be dead It will be dead depending on what happens with the new consoles. It will be dead. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Because I just can't picture any escape route for them to become a relevant, viable business short of what we said a long time ago.
It's too late.
Of them turning around and turning it into a beer, wine place that you can go and play video games, hang out, and do different things.
But let me tell you why it's too late, because people are already the local the barcades and stuff like that are already popping up in these areas, and GameStop's not going to be able to compete
on it.
They're too late. They're too late. I mean, there's a couple places here that offer similar services to that, and it's just too late. And it's honestly, it would be so disjointed because they're such a large company that it's probably not feasible. So, rest in peace. Good luck. Good luck to all of you folks. Brian, I caught an interesting article. I don't know if you saw this. It was over at Kotaku. The headline is, after buying up studios, Xbox says it doesn't have the resources to run them. And it's an interesting piece. On May the 7th, so this would have been last Tuesday, Xbox announced that it was shutting down 3 studios. Tango Gameworks, which made Hi-Fi Rush, Arcane Austin, which made Redfall, and Alpha Dog Games, which made Mighty Doom, with a 4th support studio known as Roundhouse Studios being absorbed by the team behind Elder Scrolls Online. According to Bloomberg, who had the report, there was a lot of people that were, one of the individuals called it a gut punch that the studio was being shut down. And we never, of course, it's never good when people lose their jobs, but this is what happens when you acquire small studios. you shut them down and you merge them into already existing projects. So you're not duplicating HR and payroll and IT and software as a service and all of these other expenses.
You're going to replace all those things. IT, you're not going to try to implement their things into Microsoft. I mean,
it's not practical.
Some little shop with 100 employees, who has QuickBooks or whatever they're using. Microsoft is not going to be like, okay, well, we're going to try to use your stuff in your location. They're going to absorb you into the big conglomerate that they are, so that they can streamline your cost.
And I think, and that's exactly what it is. So I thought it was an interesting piece. I mean, there's not really too much there. You can't really say you're surprised or shocked by it. The claim that they don't have the resources to run them makes sense, because it doesn't make financial sense or logic to have all of these disjointed studios all kind of in their own little silos doing their own things, when you can bring them into another studio, whether it be Bethesda, ZeniMax, Activision, Xbox first-party studios. I mean, there's 1,000, literally probably 100 other places that these people could be. And the good news is, now that Microsoft owns the IP, they can do they can do sequels and things of these games inside of other studios and inside of other publishers.
Well, there was another one I saw where they quoted Phil Spencer, who talked about how the recent Activision Blizzard layoffs that they did, I think in March, were because of the failing and falling industry. The profits that they were getting from that have gone down. And this is what we said immediately, because people were like, well, this is so unfair. You bought them. And I think at the time when we initially heard about them laying people off after the merger was completed, we made a statement indicating this, that, there's the whole industry across the board. I mean, you remember our January, February show where we talked about what happened in January. It was just the whole industry has just taken a nosedive. And he says it, but I think a lot of people didn't. They just wanted to bash Microsoft and say that they were, being a big mean company and not being fair to the employees. But I think they did pretty well to hold off laying people off as long as they did, because a lot of other studios in industry, big companies in the industry, did it a lot earlier than they did. They held off for quite a while before. And the same thing, Activision Blizzard, I'm sure they didn't want to lay a bunch of people off before the merger, because then everybody would blame it on the upcoming merger.
Sure.
It's kind of they're going to get blamed either way. But we're still in a very shrinking time for video games. People are still having issues with money. There's a lot of people living off of credit cards, living paycheck to paycheck if they're getting a paycheck. I think that this is something where we really need to just realize, until the economy gets better, your video game industry is going to be like this. And we're going to continue having tons of layoffs, companies downsizing, because everything is set up against them at the current time.
This came out today, the CPI up to 3.4% from a year ago. So, I mean, once again, you're looking at what, things cost last year. It's almost 3.5% more than the year before. It was 3.7 the month before that, 3.2 the month before that. I mean, this stuff, you build a snowball and you get it rolling down the hill, and the next thing you know, it's this massive thing when it hits the bottom. That's what this is. I mentioned it earlier in regards to the used video game market and GameStop. The other sad reality right now, Brian, is there's just really not a whole hell of a lot coming out, and there's just really not anything. I mean, you know what? I'll tell you the game that I'm waiting for, Brian? Grand Theft Auto 6. The same game I've been waiting for 12 years at this point. I mean, that is the only video game that I have any interest in playing that's new.
Yeah, and that's the one I think that everybody is just waiting and anticipating. I think if you picked any title out there, that's one of the only ones.
But what else is there?
Where people say, I am going to buy that. I mean, the Call of Duties and things like that, you've talked about that before. There are people that will always buy those. Same thing with Grand Theft Auto.
I think there's a new Call of Duty out right now. There was one that came out, I think, late last year. I didn't buy it. I don't even know what it is. Call of Duty.
Well, then maybe that's fading for Call of Duty.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3
Grand Theft
came
Auto,
out.
they're so few and far between, and there's such quality releases that everybody's waiting for it.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Quality.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 came out in November of last year. I don't believe I purchased it. I don't think I did. If I did, I haven't played it.
And maybe they're putting out too many, too often.
It's every
year. The problem
year.
is now everything, they're continuing to put updates out. It used to be you'd get a game and it wouldn't be updated and changed a lot. They wouldn't keep adding things to it. And so you'd be like, oh, well, I want to get a new game so I can get a new experience. A lot of people stick with the older games now because they're still continuing to put things out for some of them.
Yeah.
Or, or have it seem like an active user base.
I'm just
One
checking.
thing I did want to mention,
go ahead.
Activision did get hit with a $23.4 million U.S. patent verdict for multiplayer gaming. And that part of it was, so the multiplayer technology that they used it's been said that the ones that they used in World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and just a various number of the Call of Duties infringed on a patent holder named Acceleration Bay. Now, here's the statement from Activision. They say, while we are disappointed, we believe there are strong bases for appeal. We have never used the patented technology at issue in our games. The two patents that they're saying were infringed cover communication technologies related to simultaneous sharing of information between multiple widely distributed computers. So it's one of those probably, I would assume, one of those fairly broad patents that they seem to give out to some people because that's a pretty basic topic. But 2000 and whatever, when they gave this, they must have thought it was a new and upcoming technology. But
I find it interesting. I find it interesting that WoW is listed in here. I mean, their multiplayer technology has existed for 25 years at this point or something.
Yeah, and that's where I was looking for a date of when, I don't know.
2016.
Was that? I mean, WoW was out. Maybe it's some of the newer implementations of WoW.
I can
when they started improving those things.
I can presume their netcode has changed in 20-something years, so I guess it must have been whatever that is. Interesting.
So it's 18 million for World of Warcraft, 5.4 million for Call of Duty.
Oh, that's okay. So it must be big time on WoW. Whatever netcode.
Whatever this technology is, yeah. So that's not helping that bottom line. I mean, all these studios are struggling. Things like that are definitely not going to help.
That's why you have That's why you have attorneys on retainer, Brian. As you and I know, we keep our attorneys
of course,
with our big for our big retainer bucks. Absolutely.
I wanted to mention too, Unity. They had losses of $291 million in the first quarter of 2024 because of their restructuring. So remember, they kind of redid everything. Late last year.
Yeah, I bought some Unity stock hoping that Apple would buy them because a lot of the Vision Pro stuff is on Unity. A lot of the stuff that's on the Vision Pro is I think Unity's the engine behind a lot of that. It's down 28% since I bought it, so that has not yet come to fruition for me. There's still hope if the Apple Vision Pro thing, whatever it's called, takes off. I get it. Yep, it's good times for old Nick.
Well, and I guess the bright side would possibly be that this restructuring will end up making them stronger to be able to come out and actually have a better stock price in the end.
Yeah,
they call it a cost reset.
Yeah, I'm just hoping Apple doesn't buy them now at their low and be like, I get a terrible deal on my stock split and lose all of it. That would be tragic.
Well, it says they do expect year-on-year growth of up to 4%. So
not great.
Hold out.
I am. At this point, I'm not selling down 28%. We'll just ride it to the bottom and sell the farm. That's
you should just sell it all and put it all in GameStop, and then you'll be good.
If you want to continue having me do the show with you, that's probably not the advisable thing of putting all of my money into GameStop because I won't be long. I won't be long for the world if that's the case with the way things are going. So, I mean, it's everywhere. It's tough everywhere, especially for these engines as they try and figure out. I guess we can parlay this into your sponsor, Epic Games and Unreal Engine, as they try to figure out how to fund these things long term. I mean, Nothing is free. A lot of these services started off with a lot of free offerings and still do have a lot of free offerings to try and bring users in. But long term, Brian, if you're hiring staff, if you're buying malls, as Unity did in the Cary, North Carolina area to convert that into an office, that stuff is very expensive to do. And Epic is now coming out with new details for Unreal Engine pricing for non-game developers, which is a huge market that they're expanding in movies, television, what is being used in live television production to create essentially AR scenes on live television. And they've said that they will charge non-game developers an annual subscription of $1,850 per seat to use Unreal Engine as opposed to its royalty-based model for game developers, which makes sense because you're not selling the product if you're using it in a production. And that
because you can't guarantee how the money actually comes in. I mean, it could be an ad you made, and you can't directly link this advertisement brought in this many dollars, therefore charge me this percent.
Yeah. So I thought the price was actually fair. I mean, when you look at like AutoCAD and even like the Adobe Photoshop suite, or the Creative Cloud suite, depending on what you're purchasing, this seems pretty realistic with I would argue it's low for the kind of productions that are using this. Now, obviously you've got indie things and whatnot that $1,800, $2,000 is a lot of money, sure. But for the big guys, $1,850 for an annual subscription is nothing. I mean, some of these companies are probably paying $10, $15, $25, maybe $30,000 a year for Office 365 and all of the email or through Google Workspace or some of these other things. Like you look at a company like Linus Media Group, can you imagine what their monthly SaaS costs are for for the entire Adobe suite that they have and all of their other software as a service tools? I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, depending on what all these services cost combined. It's an incredible amount of money.
And some of these applications that they use for video game development have thousands of dollars in licensing fees per system already. And one thing that Unreal is starting to do is replace a lot of those products. If you look at what some of the more recent versions of Unreal's versions that have been released, they're starting to put in a lot of animation things so you don't need to have special software on the side that you're working on that and then re-importing it, because they used to have these pipelines where you'd work on it in this application. When you're done, you'd hit a button, then it'd import it and set it all up inside of Unreal, because Unreal didn't have the ability to do it well. But that's something that they've been really looking at, is how do they make Unreal Engine kind of the everything for the development. The one thing it doesn't do at this point is create models and things like that. I don't know if they ever will go to that level, but anything outside of that, from rigging to, they've got MetaHuman. That's something huge, for creating models. They built that now kind of into the engine. It's more of a service. But that used to be something that you had to have, some sort of 3D modeling software that cost sometimes thousands of dollars, unless you're trying to use an open source application.
The Creative Cloud with all apps is $90 a month. That's just over $1,000 a year for all of that. So, I look at the Unity price and it seems very realistic.
Yeah.
Which is good. Because I think you could easily say $3,000 or $4,000 a year, and I don't think that at that point it's even exorbitant in terms of what they're charging.
But if you're making things in engine like that for video or for animations, then you're going to be able to make that money back. This is for companies.
That's my point.
You can this is for people that are selling products, making and selling products.
Well, television stations,
digital projects. Yeah, that maybe you're doing live scenes or something like that. This for them is going to be a minimal cost, because you really don't need a lot of copies of this. Because you'll have one person or one system that's doing this. That's your total cost that's running it. Or maybe you have a couple people making videos for you. well, if you have a couple people making videos, that means you're putting out a decent number, and you will be able to afford this. So I think they put it in a place that's not going to make people run away.
Yeah, and this is 3 years ago. I don't know if they're still using Unreal, but this is what the Weather Channel does. You think an $1,800 subscription for them is going to break the old piggy bank, Brian?
No, and then if you look, I think this is what people are going to expect when they're watching the news at some point. It's highly interactive as far as, they're walking around what seems like actual objects. The information is real time, and they can just set up all these scenes beforehand, and these people just kind of walk around in a little green screen room and act like they're pointing at things that they don't see, and like the weatherman has always done.
Yeah, it's just a different, much more in-depth version of green screening, which we've seen now for 60 years, I guess, is 50, 60 years in terms of that kind of technology. So, good for Unreal. I think that's fair. They say that the charges do not apply to game developers who will continue to pay for access to Epic's tools via a 5% royalty on products that earn over $1 million in lifetime gross revenue. Instead, the new per seat effective per user subscription fee will only apply to non-game engine developers, such as those that use it in film, television, information systems, and cars, or immersive experiences such as theme park rides that are not sold directly to consumers. So all of these things I'm thinking of are people that can justify $1,800 a month.
Yep, and I don't expect them to do anything. One thing Epic seems to do really well is add a lot of value to their products.
Yeah,
they keep adding value. It's a nonstop thing of trying to. It seems like they're competing. They're doing business. They're trying to compete with Unity. They're trying to compete with all these companies, and so far they've done a really good job of maintaining it. And I think going forward, there's an article that we have here about the Metaverse. Someone saying Fortnite is winning the Metaverse. I think that's going to be something they transition into, and then they'll have a version of. They already have their Fortnite editor. They've created a special client that makes it easy for people to, or even kids, to create maps and create all these different things. It's one that's tuned for making things easy to create in Fortnite. And so, they've just gone above and beyond. And I think like something like this, look at what Facebook has tried to do to get into the metaverse. They've almost bankrupted their company at one point trying to do it. I think they're set up. Epic is set up to just do this naturally because they've already got a huge number of people. They created custom maps, custom game modes, and they're just growing that and making. My son's been playing the race. They have all the cars from Rocket League, and they created racetracks in Fortnite, and he does races in the So they're adding all these extra sub games inside of it, and I think that is what's going to become the metaverse, and that opens up a whole new other area for people creating assets to put into these things that they can then sell or create a marketplace for. It's just, I think they're doing a good job of seeing the dream and chasing it, unlike GameStop, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. I think that they're seeing the dream, and I think they're the ones who are going to actually accomplish it, where people will go into a virtual reality. We should talk about that with the glasses and everything, but go into this virtual reality, something like Fortnite, where it may not be called Fortnite at some point. Fortnite might be a part of it, but I think it'll be part of that whole universe where you just go in and you do stuff and you play around and you hang out with people. Like that's what I consider the metaverse in the future.
I really hate
our old
term.
IRC or whatever it is.
I really don't like the metaverse term.
Yeah, so can you think of something that you would? I don't. People don't really even know what it is. Really. Most people don't know what it is.
When I think of metaverse, my gut reaction is something like Half-Life.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I'm thinking of a using the term verse, okay, universe, metaverse, something that's virtual. And yes, I understand that Fortnite's got all these game modes and things like that. When Facebook originally, and this was all Mark Zuckerberg's great idea, he spent like $500 million or some absurd amount of money on the Metaverse. And it was all these kind of pre-rendered virtual scenes that you would hang out with in your VR headset, essentially like a VR chat. And I don't see it. Not right now. Not with the technology that's available. I mean, the Apple Vision Pro's been out for months now. Have you heard anything about it?
No.
Besides a couple of clips on Twitter every once in a while, or some tech YouTubers reviewing it early on. Other than that, they're just not seeing anything. And it doesn't help that the product is freaking $3,000 or whatever, however, what absurd amount of money it costs. But it's just
most things unveil naturally, though, and I think this is something that's not unveiling naturally. People see that it's something that it might eventually go to, and they want, and so they're labeling it, they're naming it, and now they're trying to figure out the path to get to that. But if you look at the past versions of kind of equivalencies to this, would be YouTube. When you talk about online video for a long time, YouTube was the only place you went to go do that. When you talked about social media network or a place where you go and find somebody it was Facebook. Like you say, I'm going to Google it, or I'm going to add you as a friend on Facebook, and everybody seemed to have access to both, either account on both of those or access to both of those. Right now, there is nothing like that for the metaverse. Now, for kids, they're like, oh well, hey, let's go play on Fortnite together. Like there's that for them, that small little subset of it, but they got to figure out, how do we create the thing that everybody just is already somehow a part of? Every business, has some sort of representation inside of it, and every person has some sort of representation inside of it. Like, how do you get there? And I think that that's what they're struggling. How do you create a uniform place? Because Apple thinks, well, if you put on some magic glasses, all of a sudden you're going to be there. Well, how do you get everyone else on there? And that's what they haven't figured out yet. It's got to be something simple through your phone, something that everybody, without a really expensive set of devices, that they can become a part of. And that's what I don't see it yet. And I don't think anybody really has figured it out or found a way to implement it to where, what, is grandma going to be a part of the metaverse? Because grandma's a part of Facebook, right? How do you get it down to that level?
Grandma's still trying to figure out what happened with her analog television in 2008, Brian. I mean, she's not even past the digital TV transition. So that's what I'm saying. I don't like the term, because it just, unless we're at a point where it's Ready Player One and everybody is living in this, I mean, it's the one world government dream of everybody living in their little pod and sitting inside of virtual reality for 12 to 16 hours a day and just living your life in there. To me, that's the metaverse, of which I have no interest in. And I just don't, I don't understand the term. I think it's stupid.
Well, when we get to the point to where when people go on a date and they say, hey, I'll meet you at this place, and they name this place, and both of them know where that is in this virtual place, that's when it becomes the equivalent of whatever this metaverse is. When I'm going on dates in the metaverse,
I need you to book a ticket to Wilmington and shoot me in the head.
But that's the reality of it, though, right? It's got to be that enticing and that comfortable of a place where you want to just be there. Just like when people go on Facebook and browse, people go to YouTube and browse. It's got to be a place that you're going and you're wanting to experience, and you put yourself there and you're there. Not something, oh, well, let me go find some goggles and let me go do all these things. And how do I get there? Where is this? What is it? That's the stage we're at now. So, like, if I told you, hey, you want to go be a part of the metaverse? Okay, well, how do you implement that?
Is there a white van and free candy associated? I mean, what kind of deal are we talking about here?
It's not. It doesn't exist yet, and everybody's trying to label it. That's kind of the crazy thing, I guess.
And I'm not sure
it's not even real yet.
No, it's not, and I think that's what's so frustrating about it. Is to me, this is probably a pretty bad analogy, but it's just like how everybody uses the term AI now. I mean, I updated Instagram on my phone today because I was having a problem with it, and now you load up Instagram and you go to like the messages tab, and at the top it says, "Ask Meta AI anything." It's just freaking everywhere. I mean, everybody and their brother is AI now, and it's just like the term. It's like that this term has been so overused for so long, and all we've ever seen from the metaverse was Jim Cramer from CNBC sitting in a virtual boardroom with some stupid headset on, having a video call with Mark Zuckerberg, the equivalent of a Zoom. That was the metaverse after $500 million worth of investment. And I just don't see it. Well, it's not resonating with me.
If you look, I have an article here from Insider Gaming, and Microsoft and Epic are being sued over video game addiction. If they're getting sued over video game addiction, what's going to happen once people fully embrace this supposed metaverse and are hanging out there for, as you said, hours and hours every day? If they're getting pushback of people wanting to play video games a lot, you're trying to create an environment where people will live a big portion of their life and have this virtual fake life. So if they're getting sued for this, like, how can you accomplish that when they're being told that, trying to draw people in and have them play a lot of hours of games every day is going to get you in trouble?
They used patented designs, algorithms, and marketing containing addictive features and technologies. I mean, that is the whole point of the metaverse would be.
Yeah, you're trying to create something to draw people in and hold them there, right? I mean, they're getting sued for this, yet this is what everybody's demanding, is that they create this.
Oh, can I read this? This is
funny.
I'd like to read this for you, Brian.
Yeah.
Casey Dunn, the mother who filed the suit on behalf of her child, said, "We never imagined when our son started playing video games that he would become so addicted that his education would severely suffer. If that's the case, my parents absolutely need to join in on this lawsuit because it murdered me in high school. He would lose all interest in spending time with his friends." Different friends, I'll know.
His friends are all out using drugs. Why do you want him to hang out with them anyway?
No, his friends are hanging out online. I mean, Brian, you're my friend from online. We've been doing a podcast since I was like 14 years old.
Maybe don't realize that these kids that he's playing with on Fortnite are his friends.
Yeah.
They're not getting on bikes and riding around the subdivision anymore. They're playing online. That is the metaverse. That's eventually what it will be, is that kind of stuff.
They're poning
Go
noobs
hang out
and
online
yelling.
with your friends.
Yeah, they're poning noobs and yelling racial epithets at individuals on the internet. I mean, what possibly could go wrong?
Happened?
Also affected his physical and mental health would be at risk. These video game companies have targeted and taken advantage of kids, prioritizing their profits over all else. As a mom, I knew I had to do something to ensure they don't get away with destroying the well-being and the future of our children. No wonder this kid's playing video games. His mother sounds like a freaking train wreck.
She's an idiot, because so our oldest plays video games an hour to an hour and a half a day is his max. That's it. That's how much she can play. We, as the parents, limit and decide what he has access to, how long he has access to it, and how he gets access to it, right? This Casey Dunn hasn't seemed to have figured that out, because it's not the video game company's job to parent your child. It's your job. And just because you don't like telling your child no is not their fault. If he's having this many issues and not doing his school, whose fault is it that he's not doing his school? It's not Epic. It's not Fortnite. That's the reason he's not. Fault. It's because you don't have the cojones, even though it's the female, cojones to sit around and tell your son to get off the couch, go to your homework, or else you know what? You're not going to have any Xbox to play. My son's probably in there going like, what?
Having a panic attack.
Heard that before.
PTSD.
Yeah. if you don't follow, because this is part of teaching him, it's life lessons, that to be able to enjoy playing and enjoy these extra things, you have to do work. So if I want to have toys as an adult, what's the secret to having toys as an adult?
I know the answer. Living off the federal government.
Oh yeah, okay. Getting on welfare, they send you a lot of money. That is one way. But the other way is actually getting a job that pays you well after you get a good education. And then you turn around and get a job to where you can buy what you want and experience the life that you want. That's what you teach your kid by saying, hey, once you've done your homework, then you can go and play. If you do an hour, here's what my dad did. My dad became a concert level pianist, and he got to the level where he could have gone and done professional baseball, because she said, if you practice piano 1 hour a day, you can go play baseball 1 hour a day. So he would practice piano a couple hours a day, and he would go and play baseball a couple hours a day, and he was excellent at both of them by the time he was out of high school. That's the secret. Put your foot down. Tell your child, here's what we expect of you. Hold them to it, and your kid will excel.
So the reason I'm so mediocre at life is because of my parents? Is that what you're telling me?
Because,
I'm sure my father's listening.
Yeah, he'll text you here in a few minutes.
No, but I think the point is like this lawsuit is just so utterly ridiculous. You know, and the reality is, you know, lose all interest in spending time with his friends. That's the part that really kind of rubs me the wrong way, because Brian, I look at myself, and you know, you're going through your how you handle your stuff with your children. But I think of myself, like, if I had not had access to the communities that I did when I was in high school, I would sure as hell not be living in North Carolina. Who knows? I mean, maybe I'd be who knows?
You wouldn't be doing this podcast.
I would not be doing this podcast, which is an integral part of my life. I always make time for it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing anything. I wouldn't have the #1 rated morning talk show in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is an accurate statement, one and only. So I just, that really kind of rubs me the wrong way, because had I not had access to that, I would not have interviewed the president of the United States multiple times. Yep. I would not be in the position that I'm in. That really, I really despise these quotes from Casey Dunn. To hell with her.
Well, and one thing, I mean, some of these online communities can be healthy if you foster them correctly. Our oldest, I got him into that Code Combat. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I have actually. Online.
Yeah, I signed him up for Code Combat. He's been learning to program through that. He's been very competitive for his age group in it. And he sits there and just like I did when I was his age, where I went online and, you know, back then we were doing all kinds of whatever, you know, things online.
Chatting with older men on IRC.
Well, I thought they claimed to be my age. Who knows? I don't even know anymore.
I think we do know.
Now I assume that were adult men who were pretending to be children hanging out with me. But at the time, I thought they were all kids my age that I was talking to. But for him, he goes and does Code Combat, talks to the people in their forum, has a place where he can go and chat and talk about programming, and it's like a competition for him to go and do it because he's competing against these other kids. That's a healthy way for him to do something online, spend his time, and maybe if she would push him to do more healthy things that, like she's claiming she wants him to do, have his addiction be a healthy addiction. My son's getting addicted to competing and playing, this online game that teaches you to do something that could be a life skill, right? My other son is really enjoying, one of my other boys is really enjoying hockey and getting into that. And like, that's becoming something he's addicted to, because if it's something that's fun, you'll be drawn to it. And you can either can label it as something negative like addiction, or you could say, this is a hobby that I'm starting that I'm really enjoying.
For example, right? I have a great hobby. My hobby is going to the beach and day drinking. I mean, that's a very, very successful hobby of mine. It's the term addiction.
You're really good at it too.
I would argue that I'm in the top 1%. It's a skill that I possess and something I bring to the table. The term addiction is also something that's troubling to me. I mean,
because they're drawn to it, you're calling it addiction because you don't like it. Because you view it negatively, you're calling it that.
And she says this. She doesn't say his physical and mental health are at risk. His physical and mental health would be at risk. So is it...
If she let him do whatever he wants. Yeah, if you let your kid eat all the candy, diabetes, yes, that's what's coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so like it seems very disjointed. Apparently they're from Arkansas. I'm trying to find a picture of the family. I cannot. But apparently it's an Arkansas family. So great. Man, no wonder this kid's playing video games all day. Can you imagine having to deal with this?
He's got to get away from his mom.
I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine if this is what's in the lawsuit? The kind of garbage.
Karen? I don't know. Casey, that's right.
Casey Dunn. Can you imagine the crap he's got to deal with on a day in and day out basis? No wonder he's
I can't believe
in video games.
Fortnite is such a jerk. They're letting you play it all day long. Okay.
Can you imagine Can you imagine Christmas morning in the Dunn household with this kind of attitude? Oh my God.
You're enjoying that console we just gave you way too much. It's unfair. We're gonna sue them.
Sounds terrible. All right. Yeah. Speaking of terrible, Brian, it's terrible, but we have to end the show.
All right. Well, hey, if you want to find me, you can of course find me on X at Boise Computer, or if you want to get me at Brian Eldridge on Gab, Getter, Truth Social, other places. Of course, you can check out my blog, biteoftech.com, or if you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, just go to the upper right-hand side and join us on Discord. And if you do that, that's a way that you can get a hold of Nick or I directly. Maybe you want to join one of our 11 ARC servers that have been running for years now. We have a show news channel if you want to toss some links into there for topics that we can talk about during the live show. If you want to watch that live show, you can watch that through Twitch or YouTube, or after the fact, it gets uploaded to Rumble. We also have the podcast form at the lower right-hand side, which has a lot of different ways to listen. So whatever platform, device you want to use, pick the most convenient one. If you are listening on one of those, that means that our show notes for that particular episode are already uploaded and ready to go. So you can click on that and view the video right inside of that page, or maybe the audio can be played in there as well. We have links for everything we discussed throughout that show, so it makes it really easy if you're wanting to follow along, maybe read more into details of what we're talking about, or catch some of the videos and things on your own. Those are all available there. If you do want to support us, there's a support menu option up top, or you can go to infectionpodcast.com/support.
Brian, my friend, as always, greatly appreciated. Thanks. Thankfully, my parents didn't sue Google Hangouts or one of these other services, Skype, that I was using but when we met. So, Brian, thanks as always. We'll do it again next week.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Alrighty, folks, you can check out my day gig. It is the Wilmington's Morning News Podcast. It's available wherever you get your shows. Brian, I didn't tell you this. I had a tweet. Did you see my tweet that exploded last week? It got 3 million views on Twitter. It got retweeted by Ted Cruz and a bunch of other people. So follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig. A great way to
get a jump on that and get it to grow.
Yeah. I was on Fox. My tweet was in a Fox News article. I was on radio and television. It was a busy week for old Nick. So you can follow me on Twitter over at X and check out my website, nickcraig.com. If you missed any portion of today's show, as Brian noted, head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.